have a correction to make. So we're just going to start off with that because it is an important correction. I have been saying for much of this season that 6 of the 12 teams in this league will be making the playoffs, and that of course means after a loss to the Varsity Farm Boys this week, our Halifax Masquerade Men at 4-3 would be fighting hard for the last few playoff spots, one of them anyway, in a tough field this season. I'm not exactly sure where I got that idea from. I think I read something in the doc that I interpreted a little bit differently from, well, that I think didn't mean much at all, but I read meaning into it. But I was mistaken. It has now been clarified in the Discord. There will be 8 teams making the playoffs, just like last season, not 6. So that's very good news for me and for Spooky, coaching the Halifax Masquerade Men, as our playoff chances have gone from a little iffy to, I think, nearly assured, even after the loss this week. Maybe actually assured, I'm not 100% certain. I don't know whether we've clinched or not, but I went into this week believing that we definitely hadn't, and now there's a much stronger possibility, as there will be 8 teams making the playoffs instead of 6. And just to get ahead of this, I mean, 8 teams out of 12 is a lot. It's not necessarily, if I were the league dictator making all of the decisions myself, and I were deciding this from preseason beforehand, I'm not sure that I would choose 8 out of 12, but I actually do think that it's a good call for this season. Or, that it's worked out to one at least, and I'm definitely happy with it because we've seen a lot of strong play from a lot of strong coaches this season. Like I said, there's been a lot of parity. There have been a lot of teams putting in a lot of strong performances, and I really do feel like there are more than 6 that deserve to make the playoffs. So I'm glad that this clarification has happened. I like the result. It means that there will be 2 more quarterfinal sets to watch than there would have been otherwise, so that's nice too. But yeah, most of the league is making the playoffs, and the way this season has played out so far, I think most of the league deserves to. We'll do our twice-weekly standings update now. These were the standings, of course, at the end of Week 6. If you have watched the previous video where our Masquerade Men lost to the Varsity Farm Boys, then you have seen this exact table already. I just do this update twice a week to make sure it's fresh in your mind, and of course the result of that set is not reflected. The Masquerade Men are actually 4-3 right now, and the Farm Boys 5-2. But as you can see, going into Week 7, like I said, a lot of parity. What I thought were 6 playoff spots were all packed with teams at 4-2 or better. In fact, these 2 teams, the regional Reshirams and the drowsy Torkoals, are also sitting in playoff spots going into Week 7, but then that means that some other teams that I thought might be out of it at this point still might not be, right? I mean, going 500 when most of the league is making the playoffs, still a pretty good shot to get in. And almost every team except a couple down here are still in contention to do at least that well going into Week 7. Otherwise, even in these upper spots, there's a lot of room for teams to play for seeding, right? The seeding is very much up in the air when all these teams are so tightly packed together, so there's still a lot to keep our eyes on here in Week 7. Now, one other thing, before we jump into the replays, I am recording this later than I usually do, actually pretty close to the Friday deadline that I've given myself for it. In fact, I've already partially recorded the Week 8 Masquerade Men video as I'm doing this one right now. And the reason for that is that there is one set this week that I can't account for between the Azurbe Chatots and the Liberty Garden Garchomps. As far as I can tell, the set did not happen. There are no replays in the Discord, but all I could find in the Discord at all was one message early on about scheduling it. And then the set doesn't seem to have happened, but I also didn't find any evidence of a forfeit or a staff decision or anything. So I basically waited extra long to record this one to see if more information would come up, but I don't think it has, so I still don't know what happened there. But I do not believe that the set has been played, and I certainly don't have replays to cover now. So that's just going to be left a question mark for now. And we'll jump to the other 4 sets and see what happened in those ones, starting with... Man, I set up such a perfect transition there, and I'm going to have to ruin it because I forgot that there are 2 trades to cover this week. Maybe blame it on there being fewer trades this season than last. I don't know. But this video is going to come out a little scuffed. Spoiler warning. Watch how far I get in the replays section before I realize I'm recording in the wrong scene. Anyway, 2 trades to cover this week, and the first one is the Marvelous Bridge Malamars. Swapping out Magikarp for Duat. The Magikarp has always been a little bit odd this season. They drafted it perhaps a little bit earlier than you might expect, and they were saying that they had a plan in mind to make Magikarp actually put in some work, and then they showed up in my comments on the draft recap saying, oops, actually that plan didn't work at all in Scarlet and Violet. Magikarp was just not going to be able to do what it was meant to do as a funny meme Pokemon in that untiered slot. And then Magikarp came to a couple of sets anyway, and yeah, failed to put in any work. So it's too bad. Would have been nice to see Magikarp do something, but I'm not sure that was ever going to work out here, and it is now dropped for this Duat. Of course, can't have high expectations for an untiered Pokemon. That's why they're down in untiered. But I am a little bit curious about what Duat does for this team. Yeah, I really don't know. It gets Aqua Jet, so maybe it could set up like a weakness policy Blaziken. That actually could be pretty cool because Blaziken already passively boosts its speed with Speed Boost. So if you boost its offensive stats with a weakness policy, maybe that's the Gen 8 brain in me, because I started playing VGC formats to Sword and Shield when weakness policy was actually good with Dynamax, but yeah, I mean, I could see weakness policy Blaziken putting in some work, and that's my best guess as to what the Duat is for, but maybe it has some other surprise up its sleeve that I'm not thinking of. It'll be interesting to find out. The other trade this week is a bit of a mixed bag in terms of how I feel about it. The Foraging Furrets have dropped Bellibolt and picked up Cleavor. What I don't like about this trade is that I thought the Bellibolt Raichu discharge spam mode that they brought once was really cool, and I was kind of hoping to see it again. I mean, that's it. I don't know if it's necessarily the strongest game plans that they had available, but it was a very funny combo, and I enjoyed watching it that one time. Maybe you can get too much of a good thing, right? But the more I thought about this trade, the more it makes sense to me, especially actually just in hindsight to my set against this team in Week 6. When I mean, it was a very close set, and kind of came down to muddy water accuracy in the end, so could have gone either way. And in hindsight, I definitely have some issues with how I prepared for that set. But even so, I was able to get strong defensive positions against this team just by running a lot of Special Bulk and a lot of Grass Terras, right? A lot of their game plans focus on Serperior, Politoed, Kingdra, and sometimes Raichu. Those Pokemon all have stabs that are resisted by grass, and they all function mainly as special attackers. So Cleavor patches up what was a pretty glaring weakness in this team that I attacked aggressively when I faced them head-to-head. So pretty easy for me to see the point of this trade. It's a strong Bug-type physical attacker. If I get a rematch against this team in the playoffs, I can't just cheese them with Special Bulk and Grass Terras anymore. At least that's harder to do when they have a Pokemon that specifically threatens that plan. And that means other opponents from here on out are going to find it harder to do the same thing that I did as well. So I'm a little bit sad to see Bellibolt go, but I think this trade makes a lot of sense for this team. It's a very direct, straightforward solution to what was a real problem for them. Okay, now back to that transition I set up earlier. The Falinks taking on the Alberta Arcanine. The Falinks, of course, one of those teams packed in at 4-2, looking to improve their seeding heading into the playoffs. The Arcanine already out of the playoff picture, but, I think a lot of coaches are still going to be fighting for a strong finish if they can pull that off, and they still can mess with another team's seeding. That's not nothing, right? Playing spoiler late in the season. The Falinks here running the Ambipom. I feel like I haven't seen that Pokemon in a while, but it makes a lot of sense to enable strong offensive modes here. They have, of course, one of the fastest, most threatening attackers in the league with the Dragapult. They have the Sylveon that put in so much work last week. They have the Tauros. A lot of different ways to try to break through the Arcanine lineup, and it's all enabled not just by Technician boosted Fake Out and the like from Ambipom, maybe some speed control, but also they have that redirection with the Electabuzz that put in so much work next to Sylveon last week. So we'll see whether they can just blast through their competition again, and even if they can't, then they can fall back on the Mudsdale for a bulkier setup mode, right? Mudsdale I could see playing very well into Pokemon like Ceruledge, Alolan Golem, and even the offensive Smeargle that we've often seen the Arcanine bring. And the Arcanine do have that Smeargle. At this point in the season, we can think it's probably running Population Bomb or Boom Burst to try to do some damage. They have probably their strongest offensive combination, I think, at this point, of Volbeat and Porygon Z. Porygon Z hits extremely hard, but is not especially fast or bulky, so Tailwind support from Volbeat can go a long way there. They're also able to potentially set up the Ceruledge with a Swords Dance or Bulk Up, or, I mean, Ceruledge is a number of different sets it can run. And then Lapras and Golem are kind of wild cards, right? We've seen Lapras click Sheer Cold in a lot of weeks. It hasn't hit so often, but maybe it's due. And then Golem, I don't know what that's going to do. Let's just jump into game one, shall we? So we see Smeargle and Golem leading for the Arcanine against Ambipom and Mudsdale. Mudsdale... Okay, I paused a little bit slowly there. We can see Ambipom is going for the side beat up. It's trying to set up the stamina boosts. Makes a lot of sense to me. Mudsdale is very well positioned here, or at least it looks that way against Golem and Smeargle. Golem not really obviously threatening Mudsdale in any way. Mudsdale, of course, immune to its Electric Stab, resisting its Rock Stab, and with stamina boosts from the fastest Pokemon on the field in Ambipom, it's going to take other physical attacks pretty well, you would think. That also means it's not really threatened by a Population Bomb Smeargle, but honestly, I kind of wonder whether Mudsdale is threatened by something like a Boom Burst Smeargle. The beat up is doing, I mean, it's going to do less damage as the stamina boosts go up. I think it works that way. But that first beat up hit did almost 10%. That's a little bit of the downside of Technician on your side boosting Pokemon, right? But in this position for the Mudsdale, it's probably worth it. The Golem has not protected. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Smeargle isn't going for Boom Burst, but like you probably don't want to damage your own Golem unnecessarily. So I actually could see the Smeargle doing a lot of damage here, but I think the lack of a Protect already makes that less likely. But let's see. Oh, the first beat up hit was a crit. I missed that. That's why it did so much more damage than the others. Okay, never mind that thing. The Mudsdale doesn't actually take that much from its own partner. Smeargle actually going for no retreat. So the Arcanine also boosting here. And that Boom Burst Smeargle is still possibly on the table. Body Press into Golem just knocks it out, so we don't find out what Golem does in this game. Lapras coming in to replace it. Ambipom switching out for Tauros. Tauros can't take a Sheer Cold any better than anything else, but it's also weak to Freeze Dry, but it is otherwise going to resist attacks from the Lapras, and it does turn off the Smeargle's attack boost from No Retreat. So if Smeargle is going for something like a Population Bomb, that's going to be a little bit nerfed, but I think Tauros is mainly here to threaten the Lapras, resist its stabs other than Freeze Dry, and actually it can threaten a close combat into both of these Pokemon. So you got double fighting coverage on the field now for the Falinks. It looks like a very strong position against a very fighting, weak Arcanine lineup. We haven't seen the Ceruledge or the Volbeat. It's still possible that one of them is in the back. Of course, Volbeat is a fighting resist, but it's still not going to take strong boosted fighting attacks very well, so the real thing is we'll see whether they brought the Ceruledge to this game. Mudsdale showing the Ice Terra. I don't know what that's for in this matchup, but Smeargle trying to go for No Retreat again. I believe No Retreat only works once, and that is consistent with what we see here, as it is unable to get any boosts from the second click there. And it makes sense, right? Because in terms of move design, No Retreat is very strong with the Omni Boost. The trade-off is supposed to be that you can't switch out, but then you can't impose that trade-off more than once, right? If it worked more than once, then every boost after the first one would just be free, because the downside is already there either way. So I don't know whether the Arcanine coach knew that, but this No Retreat does fail. Lapras going for Perish Song is an interesting idea. Perish Song is kind of... the synergy is a little weird with a partner that makes itself unable to switch out, right? I don't actually know if... okay, hang on. First of all, maybe the idea is to get quick KOs with Smeargle, and then you don't have to worry. The Perish Song is just a late game win con, but like the Smeargle is supposed to put in work before it goes down. Maybe. We're not going to find out because Mudsdale just one-shot the Smeargle with a +4 body press. But what I was going to say is, This is such a niche mechanical interaction that I've never thought about before. If you Terra Ghost, can you switch out of your own retreat? Your own no retreat? If you use no retreat to trap yourself on the field, and generally Ghost-type Pokemon cannot be trapped, would a Terra Ghost Smeargle be able to switch out here? We might have to do one of my signature Bulbapedia breaks between games here, because I'm curious about that now. But in any case, the Smeargle doesn't show its Terra type at all, and it does drop to a Body Press after failing to do any damage in this game. Maybe we'll see what happens in Game 2. But the Terra Ice Mudsdale is still puzzling me a little bit. I mean, okay, you Terrasilize here to turn off your weaknesses to Lapras' stabs. I just don't know why it's Ice in this matchup. Maybe I'm forgetting something about the Arcanine roster, but given that I've already prepped to play them myself this week, I hope I'm not forgetting something big. This week being week 8, that is, when I'm really recording this. We've covered that already. Okay, there's the Ceruledge, so it is here. Of course, Tauros is threatening both these Pokemon, but I don't think we've seen a Terra yet from the Arcanine. We have not. The Body Press into Lapras also probably just knocks it out unless it Terrasilizes into Ghost or something. It just protects here. But Tauros, yeah, I mean, I think that was pretty easy to call. Tauros just goes for a Wave Crash and knocks out Ceruledge. And also Lapras still threatened by the Body Press. It protected this turn, but I mean, even if it wears down these Perish counters, yeah, the Falinks still have their 2 Pokemon in the back. Tauros gets rid of its Perish counter now to bring Ambipom back in. Oh, that's what the Terra Ice is for, of course! I actually did consider that when I was prepping for this team. Wait and see whether I've used it anywhere myself. Okay, maybe I've tipped my hand on that one. I actually did think about Terra Ice at one point. But I forgot. Ice types are immune to sheer cold. Mudsdale wants to play a bulky game plan, get set up, and sit on the field for a long time, not afraid of taking hits from the likes of Ceruledge, Golem, Population Bomb Smeargle. And what's a weakness if you're trying to sit on the field for a long time? Your opponent actually landing their one-hit KO attacks. So I feel... I mean, we're so out in the weeds in terms of mechanical interactions in this game. This is an incredible way to start the video with this game right here, but I actually feel a little silly for not picking up on that sooner. That's what the Terra Ice is for. It's the sheer cold immunity, and Ninja Meerkat is showing here that it was well worth it. As Mudsdale Body Presses Lapras down to a Focus Sash. But also, I mean, yeah, Ninja Meerkat can switch out of the Perish Song, and the Raymore King can't because Lapras is the last Pokemon, so it can protect here, but it's just gonna drop. I'd rather just kill myself. Okay. Yeah. We're gonna go to Game 2 in a second, but first, no retreat. I'm glad that Bulbapedia came up first. That feels like one of the ones where maybe I should have typed Bulbapedia into the search. Like if I'm searching Gloom or something. It prevents the user from switching out or fleeing unless the user has the Ghost type. So the Ghost type trapping immunity is still in effect. If it's Terra Ghost Smeargle, it will be able to switch out of its teammate's Perish Song if it Terrasilizes after using no retreat. But, I mean, this set's crazy already. Anything could happen in Game 2, so let's see. Lapras leading with Golem this time against Ambipom and Tauros. Okay, so Ninja Meerkat not going for the Mudsdale setup immediately just yet, which maybe is for the best. Maybe anticipating that the Raymore King is going to lead Lapras this time, since Lapras is at least an offensive threat into that idea. I mean, at least on paper, if sheer cold is its only damage, then as we've seen, it's not such an offensive threat, but it could be carrying something else. Golem Terrasilizing to the Electric type, still taking a lot from a Wave Crash. No Fake Out from the Ambipom this turn, instead just a knockoff into Lapras, getting rid of the Sash. Lapras going immediately for Perish Song, and Golem uses counter into Tauros. What? Okay. Oh man, this set's just full of surprises. I'm so glad this is the first one of this video. This is really starting things off in the right mood. The Lapras was such an offensive threat into this whole team. Weak to fighting, just kind of frail. Weak to fighting, weak to water, weak to fighting and water. And the Golem just got rid of it turn 1 with counter of all things. I mean, it could probably get rid of it with an electric attack too, but it's really exciting to see counter pay off like that. That's great. Ambipom's on a Perish counter. Hard to imagine that will matter that much here, but the Sylveon comes in. It's ready to probably just start blasting with Hyper Voice. Sure enough, that's actually not great damage. Well, I mean, I don't know my calcs. It doesn't feel like great damage into Lapras, given that it's a crit, but chip is chip. Ambipom will knock out the Porygon Z before it can do anything. It really is a very scary, hard-hitting Pokemon, but yeah, probably needed that Tailwind support in this matchup, or like redirection from Smeargle. Ooh, choice specs too. Lapras missing a Sheer Cold. It'll drop to an attack next turn, and it can no longer switch out of its own Perish Song. And here's the goal. Actually, it can. There's still the Smeargle. My bad. Yeah, but the Lapras is still... I mean, it's going to be outsped and knocked out by most things here at this point. But here's the Smeargle. Just dropping to the Hyper Voice. Of course, we know that Smeargle doesn't have the Focus Sash because Lapras did. Golem does actually take the Hyper Voice, but not the follow-up knockoff. Ooh, it's Assault Vest Golem. Okay. Well, there it goes. And I think they'll just clean Lapras up here. It does protect, and Ambipom will drop to the Perish Song. So hey, Lapras gets that KO in the league stats. But now Dragapult gets to close this one out. One day you'll hit it. That, I assume, is about the Sheer Cold. But of course, Ninja Meerkat, you made that a lot harder in Game 1 with that Ice Terra. Good tech for sure. Okay. I don't know what else there is to say about that set. That was a wild one. I had a lot of fun watching it. Some really interesting attacks on both sides for sure. Now we have the Foraging Furrets taking on the Peaceful Porygons. And just look at this enormous Strudel right here. Why is it so large? What happened to this Strudel towering over its teammate Charizard here? I hope we see it put in work in proportion to its size in this set. Oh, I haven't done the trades. Okay, I'll have to go back and add trades to the video. I forgot. Because seeing this Cleavor here just reminded me. Okay, on the Porygon side, yeah, we got the Charizard. No Jump Luff this time. So, I mean, they could be carrying Sunny Day on something else. Actually, that's probably what the Strudel is for. I think it gets Sunny Day, and it definitely gets Prankster, so priority Sunny Day to disrupt the Rain mode on the other side. That could pair very nicely with the Charizard here. Gastrodon is a solid bring here. It's going to redirect hits from Politoed or Kingdra very nicely. Kingdra isn't here, but they do bring it most weeks. So they can't just safely click Weather Ball or something. They can still click Muddy Water, and hit Gastrodon's teammate, but even then they're powering Gastrodon up. And while Gastrodon is very vulnerable to Serperior, something like a Poison Terra can get around that, although it could be threatened by the Gothitelle then. As always, tricky interactions, right? I don't know what the Hitmonlee is here for. I could see it being very disruptive with Fake Out, given that the Furrets tend not to run a lot of Protects. They tend to run Assault Vest and at least a couple of choice items every week. And so I can see Hitmonlee creating openings for Gastrodon to attack or Ursaluna to attack. Ursaluna is going to be interesting to position in this matchup, because at face value it's threatened by Serperior and its Water-type buddies, but then they do have the Mimikyu for Trick Room, so a few different ways to attack this. And on the Furret side, yeah, we do see that Cleavor reminding me that I'll have to go edit trade coverage into the earlier part of this video. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward Furrets lineup otherwise. The lack of Kingdra is interesting, but the Gothitelle, again, can threaten something like a Terra Poison Gastrodon. It can make it harder for Robbie to switch around a position. The Raichu is another offensive threat to Charizard that's not redirected. So a few different ways that both of them can attack this matchup. Charizard and Strudel leading for the Peaceful Porygons. So if it is priority Sunny Day, they have that on the board immediately, and I'm still not over the sheer size of this Strudel. I guess it needs that size for all those guts that it has showing up to this matchup like this. Gothitelle and Cleavor on the other side. Charizard immediately threatened by, I can see something like a Choice Scarf Stone Axe or something, but let's see what happens here. It is Terra Ghost Charizard. Again, Ghost types immune to trapping. It will be able to switch out and get away from this Cleavor. But it doesn't do that this turn. Strudel takes the Fake Out from Gothitelle and showing that it has a Covert Cloak. Sets up that Strong Sunlight. Charizard going before Cleavor, so I guess it's not a Scarf Cleavor. I could see them running Choice Band or something. In any case, a Weather Ball crit. Don't know if the crit mattered. Takes out the Cleavor. Charizard's Sun is so strong. I don't know if it mattered. Now we get Politoed, and yeah, they can set the rain up, but the Shroodle can just bring the sun right back, and it does. Gothitelle protecting on the Weather Ball, though. Muddy Water not doing very much to the Ghost-type Charizard or to the Shroodle in strong sunlight. Shroodle taking that pretty well. Serperior coming in now, but the Charizard is... Oh, okay, that's funny. The Charizard, I was going to say the Charizard is such an offensive threat to Serperior. It's really looking like the Charizard can just sit on the field and run through this game. I mean, the Gothitelle can slow it down a bit with, protecting around its Weather Ball, but it is going to be a little bit of a different game now that Shroodle is switching out. They don't have that priority Sunny Day on the board immediately in case the Politoed switches back in, but also very funny contrary interaction here as the Parting Shot actually gives boosts to Serperior. That could make it a bit more dangerous to Charizard. I believe Serperior has a higher base speed than Charizard. It definitely does. I should know this. I'm the Serperior guy, right? Serperior definitely has a higher base speed than Charizard, and there's no Tailwind on Robbie's side. And no Trick Room, at least in this game, because generally you're not going to run that with Charizard. Hitmonlee is coming in to replace Shroodle, so and Charizard has turned off its grass resistance, so Serperior actually could be a threat to it now. But here's the Hitmonlee. Gothitelle taking a Weather Ball, getting a bit of recovery. Charizard being chipped down by its own solar power will switch out to bring Shroodle back in. Serperior missing a Leaf Storm into Shroodle. That's potentially huge because that's a +2 boost that Serperior doesn't get this turn. And it takes a lot from that high jump kick. Hitmonlee takes a lot from the Psychic, but Hitmonlee... Well, maybe Serperior can knock out Hitmonlee before Hitmonlee moves, but... you'd be more comfortable with that if you were +3 instead of +1. It's Leftovers Serperior, not the Assault Vest set that they usually bring. That's interesting. Grass Terra will help with the damage, but Hitmonlee with the Mach Punch, knocking Serperior out with a crit. Hitmonlee punching things is always a little funny. I've always thought that Hitmonlee punching is more credible than Hitmonchan kicking, just looking at their bodies, so I'll at least give it that. But, yeah, I thought the Serperior had a real chance to be a threat there, but Hitmonlee shut it down pretty nicely, and in the end, missing that Leaf Storm maybe didn't matter that much, because Serperior didn't really get another chance to attack after that. Shroodle with a Parting Shot into Gothitelle this time, getting the Ursaluna in. Ursaluna with no Mimikyu in this matchup is interesting, but I definitely trust the process on Robbie's side here. Anyway, it's Politoed and Gothitelle on the other side, but Charizard and Shroodle are still in the back, so Robbie can just set the sun back up. I would say as soon as one of these Pokemon goes down, no reason to risk a switch. And this is the last time that rain is going up in this game. Ursaluna protects. Hitmonlee does a lot of damage to the Politoed with high jump kick. And will Hitmonlee go down here? It does to a Psychic. Now you can get Shroodle in and get the sun back up. Yep. There it is. Mud Slap from the Politoed, lowering Ursaluna's accuracy. Doesn't save Gothitelle from that Facade, but Mud Slap is a wild tech to bring. What is going on this week? And here's the Charizard. It actually can take a Mud Slap too now that it's a Ghost type. It can be hit by that, but it's faster than Politoed, and Weather Ball and Sun is enough here to knock Politoed out. And so, while the Furrets were able to... they were able to temporarily kind of claw that game back. They were able to make a real game of it instead of just a Charizard sweep. But even so, the turn 1 Charizard was just massively threatening in this game. Definitely more so than I thought it was going to be. Especially with the Ghost Terra, able to switch out on Gothitelle, but also no longer weak to Water or Rock. Not that that mattered when it's faster than almost everything on this team anyway. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the Furrets adjust to that threat, because the Charizard has definitely established itself as a serious problem in this matchup for them. And then the Serperior maybe had a chance to claw it back, but the Hitmonlee shut that Pokemon down very nicely. I don't know how the Furrets adjust in Game 2. Maybe there's something... Maybe they can position the Kleavor a bit more carefully somehow, but, Kleavor just dropped to a Weather Ball. You can't just switch... What you probably want to do is force the Charizard to Terrastallize and then threaten it with Serperior, but it actually works this time. Or that's one approach, but then the Serperior can't switch in, so you're still sacking. No, I think they need a better game plan than that, and it's just not coming to me right now. Maybe the Raichu can do something with Fake Out and Thunderbolt pressure. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not playing this one in their position. We see Shroodle and Charizard leading again, suggests to me that Robbie is confident in this lead position for sure. This time it's Superior and Gothitelle on the other side. Superior going straight for the Terra Grass. It is also, by the way, not the Terra Rock Superior that we've seen from the Furrets before. So if you're Robbie here, that's good information. You probably don't have much worry about the Superior being an offensive threat to the Charizard. Superior doesn't have a very diverse move pool, unless you're running Terra Blast in whatever type you want. Charizard will take a Fake Out. We know it doesn't have the Covert Cloak. So that's something. Superior gets to boost against Charizard, but we actually see that Charizard is faster than Superior. Like I said, Superior does have the higher base speed, but I mean, maybe it could be a speed tie. I don't necessarily know what either of these coaches is EV'd for, but we know that Superior is not faster than Charizard in this matchup. I'll say that. So that's good information for Robbie as well. Charizard took a fair bit of damage though, between Solar Power and everything else. Superior gets to Protect here. Brutal's going to Parting Shot out to Mimikyu. Big Heat Wave from Charizard. Actually, it doesn't chip Gothitelle that well after the Citrus Berry. Charizard has taken some damage this turn. And okay, I guess that's the adjustment from the Furrets. Just, yeah, fake out the Charizard this time. You know it doesn't have the Covert Cloak, and then slow things down a bit. The Superior protecting, and this is the downside of Solar Power Charizard. It does a lot of damage, but it burns itself out fairly quickly, and the Gothitelle showing a lot of bulk here. Kind of able to sit on the field. Superior will drop to a Heat Wave this turn. Gothitelle targets the Mimikyu, which sets Trick Room. Charizard only has one turn of Solar Power damage left in it, although it is Rain up now, so it won't be taking Solar Power damage at the moment. Terra Water Mimikyu should take that Muddy Water reasonably well from the Politoed. Charizard will go down here, so Charizard doesn't get to just run away with this game. The Furret's managing to slow things down enough for, again, Charizard to burn out effectively. But then also, Robbie clearly pivoting to a different game plan, setting Trick Room, and that enables Charizard to be outsped by Politoed and to go down. Mimikyu showing the Wood Hammer for coverage into Politoed. That is some very cool coverage right there. It's easy to forget that Mimikyu learns that move. Unfortunately for the Porygons, it misses after the Muddy Water accuracy drop. But now the Ursaluna is in Trick Room. Shroodle's back. Shroodle is bigger than Ursaluna. Okay, you get it. Gothitelle showing up again. Ursaluna will get its Flame Orb. But now the Furrets have set up the Perish Trap. Of course, Shroodle can Parting Shot out. But the bigger target to trap here is Ursaluna. It's going to have limited time to do its job, as Gothitelle also gets to fake it out here. The rain is turned off, so the Muddy Water... Well, it's not just turned off, it's also... Muddy Water is going to be nerfed now by the strong sunlight. It misses Ursaluna anyway. But Ursaluna only has 2 turns left. And now we get some Protects. Yep, Politoed also running Protect. So the Furret's not spamming Choice Items and Assault Vest like we've seen in past weeks, and it looks like the reason might be that they had Perish Trap built into their game plan, and so you kind of need Protects to make... So you need some Protects available to make that work. Ursaluna is only going to get one more chance to do damage before it drops. Furrets don't switch either of their Pokemon out, though, so they're going to lose both at the end of this turn. Mud Slap into Mimikyu. There's that again. And Politoed is knocked out, but since it stayed in on the Perish Trap, it was going to be knocked out anyway. And I guess if you're the Furrets, you're taking this Ursaluna KO. I mean, that's what they played for. And you get Cleavor against Mimikyu and Shroodle. Knock out the Water-type Mimikyu with a close combat, and yeah, Shroodle's probably not threatening much damage, is it? Cleavor at -1 defense, resisting that Gunk Shot and taking a bit less than half, and of course close combat, going to be neutral into the Shroodle, and does knock it out. So, yeah, solid adjustments there from the Foraging Furrets, just kind of slowing things down against the Charizard and letting that Pokemon wear itself down with the Solar Power, and then getting Ursaluna with the Perish Trap. And Cleavor, right? Offensive threat of a kind that they didn't have before. When I go back and give my take on the trade, I'll talk about that. But, yeah, able to play the cleaner role very nicely here. And so, it's still anyone's set. We've got a Game 3 on our hands. And the Charizard offense worked extremely well in Game 1. It didn't work in Game 2. There were some really clever adjustments on the other side. I don't know what's going to happen this time. Let's go. Shroodle Charizard lead again, all 3 games. This time against Gothitelle and Politoed. So Shroodle's probably clicking Sunny Day immediately. Charizard terrestrializing into the Ghost type this time. I talked earlier about how Charizard was free not to Terastallize in front of Superior, and maybe you don't want to because Charizard has some useful resistances in this matchup. Actually, not that many. It's kind of just against the Superior, but even then, right? Leading Superior then is smart for the Furrets in Game 2 because it disincentivizes the Charizard from Terastallizing. But what I didn't think about, and what mattered a lot in Game 2, was that made Charizard susceptible to Fake Out. This time it goes right for the Ghost Terra. It's not facing the same incentives because it's facing Politoed instead of Superior, but also can't Fake Out either of these Pokemon now. I mean, you can Fake Out Shroodle, but it won't flinch. So Charizard is free to do what it did in Game 1. And instead of a Weather Ball this time, it's a Solar Beam into Politoed, knocking it out with a critical hit. I don't think Charizard has previously shown Solar Beam in this set. I think it's just been clicking Weather Ball and Heat Wave. Maybe I've forgotten something, I sometimes do, but if I'm not mistaken, this is something that Robbie does very well, keeping the Solar Beam hidden until Game 3, and now able to put in a lot of work with it when in a position where the opponent is maybe not expecting it, and it does just knock the Politoed out. And Robbie doesn't have to waste any time clicking Sunny Day. I mean, maybe you want to if this expires, just to keep getting that Charizard damage boost, but there's no Weather War for Robbie left to fight in this set. The Weather War is over. Shroodle is free to click Parting Shot or whatever else it does whenever it feels like it. Superior on the board now. Going straight for the Terra Grass. Parting Shot into Gothitelle, of course. Advantage of Superior already being here and not able to switch in is that you know what slot it's in, so you don't have to worry about giving it a boost with the Parting Shot. Charizard went out to Hitmonlee, and Shroodle brought Charizard back in. Oh. Is it Scarf Charizard? Did I really not pick up on that? It was just clicking the same move every time it was on the field, right? And it's switched out now so that it can change moves. And that's why it was faster than Superior. Okay, yeah. Maybe I should have picked up on that sooner, but of course it's easier if you're the Furrets coach when you know how fast your Superior is, right? If this is max speed Superior and a Charizard is outspeeding it, then it's got to be Scarf Charizard. I don't have all of the same clues that the players do, but oh yeah, now that it's mentioned, oh yeah, of course it's Scarf Charizard. And it's back in and able to change moves now. It can start clicking Heat Wave or Weather Ball. And it's got a more threatening partner next to it in the Hitmonlee instead of the Shroodle. Superior lands a Leaf Storm into Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee reasonably specially bulky. Gothitelle taunting the Shroodle slot, but Charizard doesn't care about that. Superior is boosted, but Charizard hasn't been forced to Terastallize in this game, so it's... Oh wait, what am I talking about? Charizard is Terastallized. But it's faster than Superior, and Superior has no way to resist its Weather Ball. That's the real thing. Superior can protect this turn, but then, yeah, it fails the double protect. Is it trying to stall out the Strong Sunlight? I think probably. Yeah, I think that's the thing. With Politoed gone, there's just nothing taking this Weather Ball, except Gothitelle. So there's nothing taking the Weather Ball in this slot. And so I guess you're just trying to stall out the Strong Sunlight if you're the Furrets, but Superior does go down there. Maybe it's Cleavor in the back, and they're trying to win with that. It's conceivable that it can work if you turn off that Fire-type Weather Ball. But Cleavor gets in earlier than they'd like and does just drop to a Weather Ball, not showing Protect itself. And Charizard running away with 2 out of 3 games in this set. By the way, the Foraging Furrets never brought the Furret to a game. Usually they bring it every week, and I think like the idea is it's a favorite Pokemon that they want to try to get going, even if it's just like in Game 1 and then they make an adjustment if that doesn't work. But playing for seeding late in the season against the first place team, the Furret did not come to a single game. So the Foraging Furrets really, I think, trying to flex what they can do in a more competitive environment here. But if they get this rematch in the playoffs, they might have to go back to the drawing board because the Charizard was able to just run away with 2 of these games. There were some smart adjustments on the fly in Game 2, but in the end, with Politoed being the only fire resist on this team, with Gothitelle being especially bulky, but nothing else especially so, and with the Shroodle pretty solidly winning the Weather War with that Prankster Sunny Day, the Charizard was just too hard to stop, so... Maybe we'll see a different Cleavor set if these teams meet in playoffs, or maybe we'll see the Kingdra or something, but it'll definitely be interesting to find out what happens. Or maybe we'll see the Terra Rock Superior again, because I am seeing in the chat here that they forgot to change Superior's Terra type. That happens, and yeah, that adjustment could make a difference in a rematch as well. But that was a good set between 2 of the top teams in the league so far. And we'll jump now to the Drowsy Torkoals taking on the Marvelous Bridge Malamars. Two teams that, with the clarification that there will be 8 playoff teams, are at this point still fighting for those last couple of spots, I would say. But the Torkoals have really been on a tear lately. They had kind of a rough start to the season, but have turned it around and gotten to 500. And the Malamars are not far behind them. The Malamars bringing, I was going to say some of their usual mix of Pokemon, bringing 4 Psychic types into an opponent that runs a lot of game plans through Shiftry is interesting, but I do trust that they have a plan for it. And this looks like some pretty hard Trick Room stuff on the Malamar side with Slowking, Reuniclus, and Hypno all here, which makes sense into the Noivern Tailwind game plans. You do kind of have to cover for the Torkoal stuff, but the Slowking ought to help a lot with that, maybe like the Reuniclus depending on its Terra type, and I'm very curious about what the Duat is here to do. But then there's also a very fast Pokemon in Blaziken, which, I mean, it can help check the Shiftry for sure, at least if you watch out for those Wind Rider boosted explosions that we've seen some weeks. Depending on its set, it could be very helpful into Torkoal and Lilligant. But yeah, Blaziken's going to fit interestingly into what looks like a hard Trick Room game plan, but I don't know exactly what their game plan is. There may be more going on than I can see at preview. On the Torkoals side, they seem pretty ready to play any kind of speed control game. They have one of the slowest Pokemon in the game in Torkoal, but they also have the Lilligant to pair it with. They have the Tailwind Setter. They have the Shiftry that does look like an offensive threat into a lot of this team right now. Not so much Malamar or Blaziken, but certainly the rest of the team. And Mismagius should be very strong here as well when the opponent has brought 4 Psychic types. So a lot of offensive threats on the Torkoal side. It'll be interesting to see how the Malamars play around that. Torkoal and Lilligant leading against Slowking and Hypno. Torkoal goes straight for the Terra Fire after you into Eruption, knocks out Hypno. What does Slowking do? It's just expanding force into Torkoal. Was the Hypno clicking Psychic Terrain? No, I mean, unless the coach shows up in the comments, maybe we'll never know. If you do show up in the comments, I'm curious about what the plan was here. As I always am when something seems to not work in one of these sets. Torkoal will take some damage from that expanding force. The eruptions won't hit so hard anymore. It switches out now to Shiftry against Reuniclus. Lilligant just knocking Slowking out with the Leaf Blade. And there's the manual Psychic Terrain from the Reuniclus, so maybe they were trying to prioritize getting the Psychic Terrain up. Maybe the Hypno clicked Trick Room, though. So you want to go for Trick Room and Psychic Terrain, get that manual Size Spam mode going. That could be very strong into Pokemon like Noivern, Lilligant, and even Mismagius, so I do kind of see the vision against this team. But yeah, it was maybe just a little bit too slow to get set up in this game, and the Shiftry is still such a threat. It's hard to see what the Psychic Seed Duat is going to do about that, but maybe we'll find out. No, it just drops to a Leaf Blade. And Reuniclus also takes a Leaf Blade from the Shiftry, but the Expanding Force back. KO's Lilligant through the Resist Berry. That's funny, but it's not doing anything to Shiftry, obviously. And yeah, the Malamars seemed like they wanted to get Trick Room up in that game, but never did, so maybe that's what the Hypno clicked. As Clawitzer hits the field and doesn't even get to do anything, Shiftry taking the last KO. We'll see what the adjustment is in Game 2. The Shiftry really is a huge offensive threat in this game. Or in this set. This whole set. This time it leads next to Noivern. They can do Wind Rider stuff. It's Reuniclus and Slowking this time. We see Life Orb Reuniclus. Makes a lot of sense. Magic Guard removes the drawback. That's why I was running it last season with the Alaskan Absols. And we see that it's Covert Cloak Slowking. Maybe it's the Trick Room setter. I don't know. In any case, Reuniclus going straight for the Terra Steel. Terra Steel. It doesn't resist Dark. It's weak to Lilligant. It's weak to Torkoal. It doesn't resist Clawitzer. What else? What other Pokemon do the Drowsy Torkoals have? I mean, a defensive Terra type makes a lot of sense here, but I just don't... I'm not sure I see what Steel specifically does in this matchup, but obviously I don't have inside information on all the planning that goes into this stuff. It still takes a lot from the knockoff, though. Psychic Terrain and Trick Room, that's the combination that I think the Malamars have wanted all along. They do finally set it up this time, and an Expanding Force from Slowking is going to do a lot to Noivern, but nothing to Shiftry. Okay, it's Flash Cannon Reuniclus. So maybe the Terra Steel is just to change its weakness profile and boost Flash Cannon. That, I suppose, makes some sense, but I don't know. Flash Cannon is not that strong as a neutral attack, and I can't think of what it covers on the Torkoals side. I mean, it's neutral into Shiftry. Shiftry took some damage there, but yeah, maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. Maybe I'll check later. The full Torkoals roster. You know what? You're not going to be able to see this because I have the dock in a different window, but I'm going to look at the roster right now. Noivern, Dusk, Lycanroc, Hisui and Lilligant, Mismagius, Meowth, Shiftry, Glaceon, Alolan Vulpix, Oranguru, Clawitz, or Torkoal. So they do have some steel weaknesses. Lycanroc, Glaceon, and Alolan Vulpix have shown up in some past sets. But even that, those all take neutral damage from Expanding Force. Now, last season I was running Focus Blast Reuniclus and living with the fact that it was missing sometimes. That's not always necessarily optimal either, but maybe like fighting Terra Blast would be a little more solid here. But I'm nitpicking. Reuniclus drops to a knockoff. Slowking takes almost half from a Draco Meteor from Noivern, but that's not the damage you want to see if you're the Torkoals here. And now the Hypno is on the board. Is it going to start clicking Expanding Force too? But you need something to damage the Shiftry, and there's Draining Kiss from the Hypno. Once again, it's good coverage, but it's just not that strong. Shiftry surviving the Draining Kiss and knocking Hypno out, so Shiftry has still managed to put in a lot of work in this game. There's the Malamar. Just a full Psychic type 4 Pokemon lineup this game from the Marvelous Bridge Malamars. And the Shiftry is a problem, but the damage is adding up into the rest of the team. Shiftry is swapped out to Lilligant here, maybe trying to get away from like a superpower or something from the Malamar. But Slowking's Expanding Force doing a lot of damage, and Malamar knocks Lilligant out with that superpower. Now it's at +1 attack, +1 defense. It's going to be harder for Shiftry to hurt it. So it is the last turn of Trick Room, but I could see Malamar running away with this. Slowking knocking out Noivern, and Malamar cleaning up Clawitzer. The Malamar is really making the most here of the last turn of Trick Room, and yeah, I definitely think the Pokemon Malamar can just win this for the team, the Malamars. Shiftry showing the X's are good tech to cover the double weakness on the Malamar, but at +2 defense, it is too late. Malamar takes that pretty well and knocks Shiftry out with a lunge. And so, despite what I said earlier, yes, the Shiftry did put in work this game, but the Marvelous Bridge Malamars stayed focused, removed its teammates. I mean, I still don't know that the Hypno was especially valuable in this game, but yeah, removed Shiftry's teammates and were able to clean it up with the Malamar in the back. And so if you're Panda, you might want to think a little bit more carefully about how you play the Shiftry in Game 3, because it still is your most threatening Pokemon, but also they brought full Psychic. Maybe we finally see the Mismagius in Game 3. We'll see. I don't think we've seen the Blaziken either, have we? So still a lot of room for dynamic game plans in this matchup and interesting adjustments on both sides. Definitely still feels like it could go either way. We see the Torkoals going back to the Torkoal Lilligant lead against Slowking, and there it is, the Blaziken. Slowking showing the Ghost Terra. Blaziken Vacuum Wave into Torkoal. It's only going to chip it a little bit, but every bit of damage helps when you're facing Eruption, right? Slowking takes that Leaf Blade pretty nicely. Torkoal skipping the Eruption, going for Scorching Sands into Blaziken, doing quite a bit of damage. Slowking gets the Trick Room, and we see that it's Room Service Blaziken, so that's how it fits into the Trick Room game plan. I assume it doesn't have Speed Boost. Nope, it's running Blaze. Is it in Blaze range right now? I honestly don't remember how those abilities work. But yeah, it is a hard Trick Room game plan with the Room Service Blaziken fitting in nicely. Here now is the Shiftry next to Torkoal. I feel like I need to sneeze. If I sound a little weird, that's why. Please excuse me if the sneeze comes out. But Torkoal, being one of the slowest Pokemon in the game, just going to knock Blaziken out with that Scorching Sands. Scald from Slowking. It does chip Torkoal, but it is nerfed by the sun. And I'm assuming this Torkoal is like running Choice Specs or something, right? Because it just keeps clicking Scorching Sands. And it's doing pretty good damage, which is not a given with a Torkoal. Torkoal will drop there, though. Shiftry taking a superpower from the Malamar, but showing the Choppleberry. And although Shiftry... Did we see the Choppleberry in Game 2? How did the Shiftry get knocked out? Doesn't matter. Shiftry will survive that superpower, but the Malamar is starting to boost. However, at only +1, it still takes a fair bit from the X-Scissor. The Citrus Berry might make the difference, though, especially with Trick Room up. Terra flying Shiftry now, getting a helping hand from the Lilligant. It will take damage from... Well, no. It would take damage from Expanding Force, except the Malamars have not set up Psychic Terrain, so Expanding Force is not a spread move. It only goes into the Lilligant. So the Shiftry is just fine to turn off its Dark typing. And takes that lunge, no problem. It doesn't appreciate the attack drop, but with the boost from Helping Hand, X-Scissor will still take out the +1 Malamar. And that might be what decides it right here, as we see Hypno coming out on the Malamar side, Shiftry switching out to Noivern. It is the last turn of Trick Room, by the way. We see Light Clay on the Hypno, so maybe that was trying to set screens earlier. It's still hard to say what it was doing. My guess is Trick Room, but... yeah, Slowking still clicking Expanding Force. Despite the lack of terrain, it's still wearing these Pokemon down. Hypno setting up those screens. But to be honest, it does feel a little bit late for that as the Slowking drops. Hypno sets Trick Room, but Slowking is gone. And Hypno maybe has Draining Kisses. Yeah, I think definitely has Draining Kisses its only attack, and it's just not enough damage. So the Drowsy Torkoals will take this game, but a solid effort from the Marvelous Bridge Malamars. I was glad to see the Blaziken in Game 3. It was very interesting to see what it could do. But honestly, I think the Psychic Spam, getting that Psychic Terrain up as well as the Trick Room, was just a stronger mode in this set, and it was hard to break through without it. That said, I don't know if I would be bold enough to just bring the Psychic Spam again a second game in a row when there's Shiftry on the other side and a Mismagius that they haven't brought to a game yet. I'm actually a little surprised that we didn't see the Mismagius in Game 3. So, might feel a little bit bad if you're on the Malamar side of this set. Because I definitely think that there was a way to win this. And they just didn't find the right Game 3 game plan. But I don't... If I'm in their position, I think I lose this one too. I don't know that it's a game... I don't know that I would have found the right game plan here. And congrats to the Drowsy Torkoals on, I believe, hitting 4-3, over 500 after what was a tricky start to this season. And that Shiftry has been an absolute workhorse in the last few weeks, putting in a ton of work in this set, but also in some others along the way. So that was a fun set, but there's still one left. I feel like I'm rambling a lot this week. But there is still this one set between the Cryptic Cryogonals and the Regional Reshirams. Sorry if I'm a little sniffly. I think I've fought off that sneeze for now. The Reshirams, I mean, I feel like every week I say that they look like they're running a Trick Room mode, but then they also have some speed in the Jolteon to balance that out. No different this week. Braviary gets Defiant, right? I would say it's probably running that into a possible Intimidate spam matchup. So a couple of faster Pokemon that can do a lot of damage, but then also, yeah, if they do get the Trick Room going, with massive offensive threats in Chandelure and Gallade, and then support in Amoonguss, that's just very strong every week, right? And on the other side, we have pretty typical... Have I been recording this whole thing in the wrong scene? We're just going to live with it. It's the video scuffed this week. It is what it is. Pretty typical Cryptic Cryogonal stuff with the Gardevoir and the Crocodile. Have definitely been their two strongest Pokemon so far this season. Gyarados and Arcanine, pretty solid coverage between them. Possible speed control from the Kilowattrel, possible support from the Klefki, although we did see offensive Klefki last week. A lot of different ways for them to attack this matchup, but also this kind of just feels like the 6 Pokemon that this coach is most comfortable with at this point. And you can find out whether that's correct by checking out the Cryptic Cryogonals coach, Reckless Trico, on their own YouTube channel, Reckless Trico, which I am now trying to make a habit of linking in the description, where you can get a first-person perspective on this set that probably is already uploaded as I'm recording this, because I'm recording extra late this week. Let's jump in. Gardevoir and Hisuian and Arcanine leading against Jolteon and Gallade. Gardevoir versus Gallade, that's a cool storyline right there. But also the Gallade being intimidated could significantly nerf the damage output that it's threatening. So probably a strong lead position for the Cryogonals, although I don't know what this Jolteon does. Terra Grass immediately on the Arcanine. It will now resist Electric, and it's turned off its fighting weakness. So I think I see the vision there. It does make it more vulnerable to Chandelure and Braviary later, though. That's a very strong Extreme Speed, doing a lot of damage to the Gallade. Jolteon clicking Thunder Wave into Gardevoir. And yeah, Arcanine still takes a lot from -1 Sacred Sword, but after Terra, it's not just knocked out by that. Full Para on Gardevoir. Probably a strong... The Reshiram's probably narrowly avoiding some strong attack there. We see Gardevoir switch out to Kilowattrel, and here's the Chandelure. Thunderbolt from Jolteon doing a little bit less than half to Gardevoir. Jolteon very fast, but... I mean, it has a decent special attack stat, but not amazing by today's standards. But it's going to accumulate some damage on this team. As Gardevoir clicks... Whoa! Gardevoir clicks Shadow Ball. Okay. I talk a lot about how Gallade and Chandelure complement each other. Gallade hitting very hard with Psychic and Fighting type attacks on the physical side, and Chandelure with Ghost and Fire on the special side. There's some obvious synergy there, but one thing they do have in common is a weakness to Ghost. And Gardevoir being fully paralyzed turn 1, we didn't see what move it went for. We didn't get any information on what moves it has. The Reshirams switch one Ghost weakness out to another Ghost weakness, and they just take that Shadow Ball, and Chandelure is knocked out. Very solid turn for the Cryogonals there. Gardevoir switching out now, obviously threatened by the Jolteon. But we see the Crocodile come in. It's also running Intimidate. The Cryogonals finally, I guess, bringing that Intimidate spam that they've always had available. So Gallade will take another drop here. Jolteon showing the Ice Terra. Knocking Kilowattrel down to its Focus Sash would be pretty solid play to remove that Pokemon immediately, but we do see now that it has the Sash. At least they know that for the rest of the set. Kilowattrel will take out Gallade before dropping to a Thunderbolt. So you're probably fine with that trade. It's the Cryogonals. Braviary is in now, though, and Braviary is definitely an offensive threat. That Power Herb boosted Sky Attack almost knocked out Crocodile, but almost is not, actually accomplishing it. The bigger thing is Crocodile missing this high horsepower into Jolteon. Of course, Jolteon has turned off its ground weakness already, but yeah, really some real variance in this game. But yeah, that high horsepower miss is rough for the Cryogonals. Crocodile will drop to an Ice Terra Blast now, and Acrobatics from Braviary into Gardevoir. I saw that one coming. They do still have Arcanine in the back, but the Ice Terra Blast picks up Arcanine as well. So the Terra Ice Jolteon showing the strength of that Bolt Beam coverage, the classic synergy of Electric type coverage and Ice type coverage. And although I said earlier, it's not that strong by today's standards, it's still the fastest Pokemon on the board and still able to hit things hard. And with Cryogonals committing their Terra very early in this game, Jolteon knew exactly how it needed to attack each of its targets. Plus, yeah, the Braviary. I mean, it wouldn't be... Wait, the Braviary is at -1 attack. Hang on. So it's not running Defiant. That's very good to know if you're Reckless Trico. That actually makes the Braviary a fair bit less threatening. Why are they not running Defiant? But it does still hit very hard in this matchup with very strong neutral damage into Gardevoir and Crocodile. And then obviously can threaten that Grass Arcanine once the Terra is committed. So I really liked the Shadow Ball play from the Gardevoir, but between the full Para and the high horsepower miss, there just wasn't enough opportunity for the Cryogonals to do damage that they could keep up with just a full lineup of offensive threats on the other side. We'll see how they adjust in Game 2. It'll be interesting. The Gyarados could be strong into some of these Pokemon now that you know that there isn't Clear Amulet, Gallade, or Defiant Braviary, but then the Gyarados is threatened by the Jolteon. And if you bring that, maybe you have to commit your Terra early again. I'm not sure what I would do in Reckless Trico's position, but we'll just find out what Reckless Trico did. Leading Arcanine and Gardevoir once again against Jolteon and Gallade. I believe those are the same leads as Game 1. Jolteon switching out immediately to Chandelure, so Chandelure's in this slot now instead of the other one. Gallade will just drop to a Moonblast, and we do see the Gyarados actually switching in with Jolteon on the field, but Getting some good positioning here as the Jolteon is now off the board. We see Amoonguss is the last Pokemon for the Reshirams, so they actually are letting up on the Hyper offense at least a little bit in this game. But Gyarados is now threatening that Chandelure. Gardevoir maybe is choice locked. It could easily like a Psychic attack into Amoonguss or something, but being potentially locked into Moonblast against 2 Fairy resists, it switches out. Also, Arcanine is back in, and Arcanine can threaten these Pokemon pretty nicely. Chandelure showing the Water Terra, going for a Dark Pulse? Dark Pulse into Arcanine. That slot was Gardevoir. Gardevoir is weak to Ghost, which is one of Chandelure's stabs, and not weak to Dark. Does Dark Pulse cover something else on this team? I can't think of what that would be, so I'm not sure why you click Dark Pulse there instead of Shadow Ball, but okay. We see that as Life Orb, Chandelure. Gyarados going for a Temper Flare into Amoonguss. Does maybe a bit less damage than you'd like, but shows that Gyarados is not helpless into this. And maybe attacking Amoonguss instead of Chandelure in anticipation of a possible Rage Powder. Amoonguss instead just clicks Spore into Gyarados. But we see that Gyarados has the Safety Goggles. I actually thought that Arcanine might have Safety Goggles, but it kind of makes sense given that Arcanine is running the Grass Terra. You do already have... You know, it's situational. There's more opportunity cost to being immune to Safety Goggles that way, or immune to Spore that way. But you do have that option if you need it, and that frees up the Safety Goggles to go somewhere else. Sure enough, they're on the Gyarados here. Arcanine Terastallizing. It's not worried about Spore or Rage Powder at this point. It just goes straight for a Wild Charge into that Water-type Chandelure and knocks it out. Reckless Trico going crazy with the coverage moves this week. We saw Wild Charge Arcanine, now the Temper Flare Gyarados doing a bit more damage this time. All these different Pokemon on Reckless Trico's side showing why they're all individually huge, bulky offensive threats, and why this team has been so hard to beat throughout the season. And yeah, now that they're not getting fully paralyzed or missing their attacks, they are breaking through. Gyarados is going to have to contend with Jolteon now. It protects as Gardevoir switches in. Doesn't take much from that Energy Ball. And now Gyarados can switch out to the Grass-type Arcanine. The Reshirams have already used their Terra, so there's no Ice Terra Blast coming from Jolteon this time, which in the end might make a huge difference to this game. Arcanine takes that Resisted Thunderbolt. Gardevoir takes a nap, but Arcanine can't take a nap. And it knocks Jolteon out with an Extreme Speed. Has Arcanine switched moves while on the field? I don't think so, so it could be choice locked too. Wild Charge, yeah. And if you're running Wild Charge and Extreme Speed, those are probably coverage and priority to go with your stabs or something like that, so you're probably not running like Protect. I could definitely see a choice band. And again, I don't know my damage calcs. The Extreme Speed did so much in Game 1. But if Reckless Trico is running a bunch of choice items this week, with this well-balanced, synergistic core, you can, and we're seeing that you can, just pivot the Pokemon around and make the positioning work. And with all this variety of coverage on this team, this is how you pick apart an opponent with a roster like this. Now, the Reshirams, they did benefit from Volpera and Miss, but bringing a more hyper-offensive mode in Game 1 with the Braviary instead of the Amoonguss worked pretty well for them, and with the Jolteon clicking Thunder Wave to open up to create openings for its teammates. So I wonder whether we'll see the Reshirams go back to that in Game 3. It definitely felt stronger than the Amoonguss stuff in Game 2, but let's see. Kilowattrel leading with Arcanine this time against Porygon 2 and Amoonguss. So the Reshirams are not going back to a hyper-offensive mode. Instead, it looks like a Trick Room mode. Amoonguss, yeah, redirecting attacks away so that Porygon 2, I assume, can set Trick Room. Kilowattrel just Volt Switches out to Gardevoir, and Amoonguss drops to a Flare Blitz. So there will be no Spore in Trick Room this game. But Porygon 2 does set the Trick Room up, and actually Amoonguss being knocked out, you know, maybe that doesn't feel great because Amoonguss is such a good Pokemon, but this might actually be what the Reshirams wanted, as they are able to get an offensive threat in pretty freely. That said, it's Gallade, it's threatening Arcanine, but it's also under a lot of threat from Gardevoir, and I don't know that there's anything... I don't know, if anything, what the Reshirams have on the board to threaten this Gardevoir, such that it won't just knock Gallade out here. I mean, the Catracylized Glade, too. It could be like a Terra Steel or something. That changes things a lot. Gardevoir going for the Grass Terra as Gyarados switches in. Gyarados takes the Tri-Attack pretty nicely. It is Night Slash on the Glade. Once again, that is a neutral hit into Gardevoir already before Terra, so this is, you know, it would have done the same damage without the Grass Terra that it did here. And Glade just drops to a Moonblast. I can't remember whether the Reshirams coach watches these videos. I don't know. I had a question I thought I might ask, but I don't need to. Okay. Gardevoir switching out to Kilowattrel, avoiding the threat from the Chandelure. We see the Terra Water on Chandelure again. Jolteon has not been brought to this game, so you don't have to worry about preserving your Ice Terra Blast. The Terra is freer to use here. Gyarados protecting to avoid some damage. Kilowattrel will take this Heat Wave and be knocked down to its Sash. But that Sash is very helpful right now to stalling out these Trick Room turns, as is this Protect on Kilowattrel. If you're the Reshirams, you really want to knock Kilowattrel out because Gyarados is just harder to knock out. Iron Head Gyarados, wow. I can't think off the top of my head of what that's for, but it's not going to do much to this Water-type Chandelure, but Gyarados is doing its job right now, again, just by sitting here and not being KO'd by anything. Kilowattrel will drop here, but has successfully stalled out the Trick Room. And Gardevoir gets back in, able to Moonblast the Chandelure, which has turned off its Fairy Resistance. And it's now just Porygon 2 on the Reshiram side. It will knock out Gardevoir with this Tri-Attack, but now the Arcanine is back in, and Arcanine and Gyarados should have enough damage between the two of them. The Arcanine does so much with that Flare Blitz. Porygon 2 drops, and the Cryptic Cryogonals once again showing that they are one of the teams to beat this season. I've hyped up the Farm Boys, I've hyped up the Porygons, I've hyped up the Furrets at times, but I mean, I got absolutely wrecked when I played the Cryptic Cryogonals, and I'm not the only one. They're near the top of the standings for good reason. Like I said at the top of this video, there are a lot of very strong teams that have had very good seasons. I'm glad that the playoff field is larger than I thought it would be because I feel like there are a lot of teams that deserve to be in it. But the Cryptic Cryogonals proving once again that, yeah, they are one of the top threats this season for sure, and I could easily see them. I mean, this feels like faint praise, saying I could easily see them getting to the semifinals, but that just shows how strong the field is, right? I could easily see the Cryogonals winning the league this season, but there are like 3 or 4 teams I could say that about, so anything could happen as we get through this late stretch here. There's just 1 week left of the regular season. I guess not anything could happen, but a lot of things still. There's 1 week left of the regular season. And then we actually go to that single elimination playoff bracket, and we'll find out just how things shake out.